Cryptids are creatures that are mentioned in local folklore, but whose actual existence has yet to be confirmed. However, many of these different cryptids do exist, and institutions like the US Armed Forces and intelligence agencies like Sugar Grove were keeping track of cryptid encounters right up until the bombs dropped. Even though most people thought they were just folklore, cryptids were still a big part of pre-war culture. Point Pleasant built a statue of the Moth Man, Vault-Tec's University football team was called the Fighting Wendigos, and radio shows like Tales from the West Virginia Hills told stories about various cryptids reportedly sighted in the area. After the Great War, sightings of cryptids began to increase, and the reason why, at least according to Shelby O'Rourke, a cryptozoologist living in the Mire, was thanks to nuclear war removing the majority of humans, the creatures now felt safe enough to come out of hiding. Over the years, many cryptids have either appeared or been mentioned throughout the Fallout series. However, I'm going to exclude the eldritch entities, paranormal encounters, and extraterrestrials, all of which, while strange and mysterious, are technically not cryptids, who are said to be animal in nature and terrestrial in origin. With that said, we begin with the Megasloth. Before the Great War, Isaac Garahan, CEO of Garahan Mining, was known to keep several three-toed sloths on his family estate. Despite escaping captivity twice, they were always recaptured. However, after the war, they vanished again, this time for good. With no remains ever found, people speculated that the sloths had successfully escaped into the wild and adapted to the post-war environment, which is exactly what happened. Now, 25 years later, these once ordinary creatures can be found in the mire and cranberry bog, often seen hanging from large trees or ambling through tall grass. Thanks to radiation, they have grown to immense sizes, many times larger than an average human, their thick shaggy fur now covered in small mushrooms, similar to the fungus they carried before the war. Instead of using these mushrooms for camouflage, as they once did, the megasloth now thrashes violently, releasing spores that blinds nearby foes. When this defense mechanism proves ineffective, the megasloth can and will attack, hurling large rocks or charging directly at threats, using its sharp teeth and massive claws to attack. What were once slow-moving tree dwellers have, in a mere 25 years, evolved into formidable ground creatures, more akin to the prehistoric Megatherium or giant ground sloth that roamed the earth millions of years ago. While the megasloths owe their terrifying transformation to radiation, some cryptids in Appalachia were deliberately created through scientific experimentation, with one such horror being the snallygaster. One of the most bizarre mutants to emerge from the genetic experiments conducted at the West-Tec Research Center in Appalachia in 2077. Scientists working with the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, created numerous failed mutations, but one test subject, known as AM52, stood out. This mutant combined traits from multiple species, resulting in a creature so disturbing that even the researchers were unsettled by its appearance. Despite its monstrous form, the experiment was deemed a success, and many more of them were created. Originally, researchers planned to release the creatures in Huntersville for further observation, but the Great War happened, putting an end to their experiments. Yet, on January 3, 2078, the creatures escaped, leading to its spread across Appalachia. With no proper face, the snallygaster is instead equipped with a grotesque mouth, filled with rows of sharp teeth and a long tentacle-like tongue dripping with acid, which it uses to attack from a distance. If that wasn't horrific enough, it also spits balls of corrosive acid capable of burning through the toughest armor, possibly explaining how the creatures managed to escape containment in the first place. Its back is lined with spiky thorns, and it has at least 40 eyes of varying sizes. Often described as dragon-like demons, the mutated snallygasters are terrifying in their own right. However, they pale in comparison to the creature from which they get their name. German immigrants began settling in Frederick County in the 1730s, and with them came tales of a creature they called the Schnellergeist, which translates to quick ghost in German. In American folklore, the snallygaster was said to have the body of a reptile, the wings of a bird, octopus-like tentacles, and a metallic beak filled with razor-sharp teeth. According to these early legends, the Snallygaster would silently swoop from the sky, snatching victims and draining their blood. To protect themselves, the locals started painting stars on their barns, a symbol believed to ward off the creature, a belief described on a holotape at Sugar Grove.
Beverly Solomon, cryptid analyst, 10-4-77. Another interesting tidbit from the locals, this time about the Snallygaster. Alright, so the witness overheard a loud, shrieking sound and was rushed by a dark shape in the woods. It was, leaping at them, or maybe flying. They took shelter in an old German settler's barn, and it couldn't get at them, which is what really interested me. It screamed and hollered outside all night until dawn, but they knew the 7-pointed star on the wall outside would keep them safe.
I can neither confirm nor deny the repelling power of the stars, but at least Fallout Snallygaster doesn't have the ability to fly, and neither does this next cryptid either, another creature born from the experiments of West-Tec. The Grafton Monster, often referred to as the Beast of Grafton, was first mentioned in 1964, captivating the imagination of residents in Taylor County, West Virginia. On the night of June 16, 1964, Robert Cockrell, an employee at the local newspaper known as the Grafton Sentinel, was finishing his shift at 11 p.m. As he drove home, he suddenly rounded a curve and came face to face with the Grafton Monster, describing it as a huge white obstruction with slick skin and a visible absence of a head. The following day at work, Cockrell initially chose to keep his encounter to himself. However, upon learning about other reported sightings, he felt compelled to share his experience, sparking a flurry of interest that led to over 20 phone calls from other locals who also claimed to have seen the creature themselves. In the wake of these sightings, groups of teenagers ventured into the woods in search of the elusive monster, dubbing their adventures monster hunting. Several claimed to have spotted the creature, but despite the growing number of sightings, no concrete evidence ever emerged. One teenager speculated that the Grafton Monster might have been an escaped polar bear, though he offered no clues as to where it could have come from. On June 19, 1964, the Grafton Sentinel published an article dismissing the sightings as the personification of active imaginations. But in Fallout, the Grafton Monster is a terrifying reality. On October 23, 2077, scientists at West-Tec used an altered version of the Snallygaster strain of FEV to create a new mutation. The result was a gigantic creature reminiscent of the original legend. Much like the Snallygaster, this new monster was stable enough to survive and broke free from its containment unit. However, the creature was recaptured, but while it was being moved back to West-Tec, a nuclear explosion caused the driver to lose control. The vehicle crashed, and the creature escaped. And it wasn't the only one. There are more of them out there, suggesting others were also created and escaped from West-Tec, or God forbid, the Grafton Monsters can asexually reproduce. Either way, survivors have reported seeing the headless giant, with certain reports revealing the creature can discharge a corrosive oily substance that burns all it comes into contact with. While survivors wisely keep their distance from the headless creature, not all cryptids inspire the same level of fear. In fact, there's one particular cryptid that's gathered quite the cult following. It was a cold November night in 1966 when two young couples from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, had an experience that would haunt them forever. Roger and Linda Scarberry, along with two of their friends, were driving through a remote area known as the TNT area. While driving through, they encountered something truly bizarre. A creature, described as a flying man with 10-foot wings, started following their car. Terrified, they rushed to the police to report what they had seen, and they weren't alone. Wildlife biologist Dr. Robert L. Smith from West Virginia University offered a more grounded explanation for the sightings. He suggested that the creature might have been a sandhill crane, a bird as tall as a person with a wingspan of up to 7 feet and reddish markings around their eyes. According to Dr. Smith, the bird may have wandered off its migration path, sparking the string of sightings. Yet a more chilling narrative began to emerge. Just over a year after the first Mothman sighting, tragedy struck on December 15, 1967, when the Silver Bridge collapsed, killing 46 people. The disaster, coupled with the eerie sightings, led many to believe the Mothman was somehow connected to the tragedy, although this belief was never proven. Sightings persisted for years, with many witnesses standing by their stories. Linda Scarberry, one of the original witnesses, even claimed to have seen the Mothman hundreds of times, describing it as non-threatening, almost as if it wanted to communicate with her, but was unable to. Cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, author of The Mothman and Other Curious Encounters, asserts that sightings continue even today. Witnesses still describe the creature as a 7-foot-tall figure with massive wings and glowing red eyes, often seen chasing cars. Yet many skeptics argue that the majority of these sightings can be explained by natural causes or even pranks. But in Fallout 76, the Mothman is very much a real living thing. Before the Great War, the Mothman was already a chilling figure in Appalachian folklore. Legends told of a winged creature, half man, half moth, that would show up right before disasters. While most people wrote the creature off as a spooky local legend, the cult of the Mothman were more serious. They began performing strange rituals in the basement beneath the Mothman Museum, desperately trying to get a sign from the creature. And just before the bombs fell, one cultist claimed to have been warned by the Mothman about an impending flood. The cult members scrambled onto rooftops expecting a literal flood, but what hit them was a storm of nuclear fire. The cult managed to survive by fleeing to the Lucky Hole mine, but in the years after the Great War, they split into two rival groups, the Enlightened and the followers of the Winged One. By the year 2102, most of the original cultists had died, leaving only the Mothmen roaming the wasteland. But their rituals lived on in the eerie remnants scattered across Appalachia, and vault dwellers emerging from their shelters found themselves facing these bizarre creatures and the dark history their followers left behind. Then, in 2103, the cultists reappeared, picking up where they left off, performing their rituals at night in the forests, protecting Mothman nests, and guarding the creature's eggs with fanatical devotion. While Mothmen come in many different forms, easily identified by the colour of their eyes, the precise reason for the creature's existence is unknown, and what it wants isn't fully understood. But it's clear that one of these beings, perhaps the very first, provided a vision that led to certain individuals surviving the Great War, and then helping the creature thrive. Was it purely a coincidence, or something more? Either way, the Mothman has many followers, both before and after the Great War, unlike this next cryptid, who instead of being revered, is ruthlessly hunted. The Sheep Squatch, often referred to as the White Thing, is a fascinating cryptid with a woolly coat. Its long, pointed head resembles that of a dog, complete with saber-like teeth and a pair of horns. One of the earliest sightings occurred in 1994, when a former Navy seaman claimed that he saw the creature breaking through the forest. As it emerged, the Sheep Squatch knelt to drink from a nearby creek, giving the witness a chance to observe it closely. After quenching its thirst, the creature crossed the creek and continued toward a nearby road, vanishing into the underbrush. That same year, 2 children playing in their yard in Boone County also encountered the creature. They described it as a large white bear that stood on its hind legs, towering over 6 feet tall. Startled by their presence, the beast quickly ran into the woods, breaking branches along its path. Fast forward to 2015, when the Sheep Squatch was spotted again in Folks Run, Virginia. Close to midnight, 6 campers were taken by surprise, as one of them spotted a creature standing on a nearby hill. Initially crouched low, it suddenly stood up, alerting the other campers. As the Sheep Squatch began running down the hill toward them, the campers felt a surge of panic, especially as the creature was separated from them only by a flowing river. As they watched in horror, the beast searched for a way across and eventually emerged on the other side, drenched and resembling a bipedal dog. A loud guttural screech echoed from about 2 miles away, startling the Sheep Squatch, which then let out a whimper and ran away. Terrified, the campers quickly packed up their things and reported the encounter to locals, fearing that contacting authorities would lead to ridicule. To this day, their identities remain unknown. In Fallout 76, the Sheep Squatch continues to roam the Appalachian Mountains. Among the most dedicated seekers of this elusive creature was Calvin Van Lowe, who devoted his life to uncovering its mysteries. Tragically, the creature's legend took a dark turn when graduate students Michael Turner and Cindy Holloway lost their lives during an encounter with the creature. Cryptid hunter Ray Gary was also left permanently disabled after his own frightening experience with the creature, choosing to keep his story private to protect others from facing a similar fate. However, the question of where these creatures came from isn't as mysterious as it's made out to be. While local rumours once painted the Sheep Squatch as a mere thief disguised as a goat, or the unholy result of a lonely madman sleeping with a goat, the truth is, radiation transformed a common farm animal into something monstrous. And this is supported by the fact that Sheep Squatch can be seen sporting yellow ear tags, clear indicators that they were once livestock. But as to whether or not this transformation was intentionally done by some curious farmer feeding his farm animals irradiated feed, or accidentally happened when escaped goats fell into pits of nuclear waste, has yet to be said. Though, not all cryptids are as monstrous as the Sheep Squatch. Others are much more ordinary, like the Beast of Beckley. According to the reports, a witness detailed years of bizarre and unsettling encounters with a creature stalking the woods near their childhood home. The first sighting occurred around 2001 to 2002, when the witness's younger brother was playing outside near their grandmother's house. He described a black creature with yellow eyes, taller than their father, standing at 6'4". The creature's sharp-toothed smile left him in tears, and it took days for him to recover from the shock. Initially, the family dismissed the sighting, assuming the boy had seen a bear. However, years later, the witness, then 15, experienced something similar while out with a friend. While sitting near some chestnut trees, they suddenly spotted a crouching black form with 4 yellow eyes staring back at them. Panicked, they called out to their friend, who ran toward them and confirmed seeing the creature too. The beast then let out a terrifying roar, sending them both fleeing back to the house. Despite the frightening encounter, curiosity got the better of the two teenagers, and they ventured into the woods again during future visits. Over the years, they spotted the creature several more times, always maintaining a safe distance. The yellow eyes often lurked just out of reach, blending into the shadows, yet unmistakably watching. In later years, the witness moved away from the house, and sightings ceased for them. However, strange occurrences persisted around their childhood home. In February 2019, the witness's younger brother claimed to have seen the beast again, and eerie roars continued to echo from the woods. Despite the mysterious nature of the beast, its appearance in Fallout 76 is much more natural. In the game, Janelle Priblo, a trapper known for selling cryptid merchandise in her shop, first heard about the Beast of Beckley after reports of a bear being savagely torn apart. Locals also spoke of a pale monster roaming the area, which caught her attention. Determined to capture the creature and sell it to Calvin Van Lowe, Janelle embarked on a dangerous mission into the woods. Despite her warnings not to follow her, her husband did just that. Underestimating how dangerous the creature was, Raymond was unprepared for such an encounter, and it cost him his life. Fueled by grief and a desire for revenge, Janelle decided that she was going to recruit a hunting party and track down the creature. But before she could leave the area, the beast struck again, ending her life as well. In her final recording, she revealed the beast wasn't a large black figure with 4 yellow eyes, like the real-world story suggested, rather an albino wolf, one with a litter of pups, suggesting that the legendary Beast of Beckley was merely a mother wolf defending her home and children. A simple misunderstanding. But the strange thing is that her encounter was in 2077, before the war, and 23 years later in 2103, the wolf and her young pups are still there. There's no explanation as to why this is, but I think the most logical reason is the pups Janelle saw grew up, one of which had pups of her own, and those are the ones we encounter. Otherwise, the implication is the Beast of Beckley and her pups never age. Nevertheless, this is just one instance of a wolf-like creature being mythicized, much like this next cryptid, which is much more dangerous. The Blue Devil is a legendary creature that inhabited the Grassy Creek area of West Virginia's Appalachian Mountains, described as a bluish dog-like creature that prowled the area late at night, haunting the hills with its ghostly howl. During the harsh winter of 1939 to 1940, reports of the Blue Devil spread through Webster County, where residents believed the creature was responsible for a string of livestock deaths. As the sightings grew, the creature's notoriety expanded beyond Webster County into neighboring Randolph County. There, the Valley Head Rod and Gun Club offered a substantial reward, $400, equivalent to over $9,000 today, for anyone who could bring down the beast. Glenn Fisher of Bill Fisher Hollow was the first to report that he had shot and killed the creature before the reward was even posted. However, by morning, the body had mysteriously vanished. Later, a coal miner named Elmer Corley killed a large animal that the Webster County Game Protector said was not quite a coyote, though it bore some resemblance. Corley confidently claimed to have ended the Blue Devil's reign of terror and collected the reward. After that, sightings of the beast stopped, leaving his claim unchallenged. Yet, in 2103, the Blue Devil returned, and with it came a creeping dread that settled over the Middle Mountain pit stop. Both Clyde the bartender and local merchant Vera Thornburg could feel it, the suffocating sensation of something lurking just beyond the tree line. Before long, the tension broke, and a monstrous blue beast emerged from the shadows, leaving destruction and fear in its wake. As whispers of the Blue Devil spread, cryptid hunter Aries, formerly known as Calvin Van Lowe, sought out Clyde with an unsettling request. He wanted Clyde to dig into the origins of this terrifying creature, but his focus was strangely specific. Aries had a particular interest in tracking down a mother Blue Devil, one with distinctive white markings. Why the mother? Why those markings? Aries never said. Clyde's search uncovered disturbing fragments of truth, revealing the creature was bred long ago for racing and then for fighting. Developer notes hint that these beasts likely descended from German shepherds, but something changed. Clyde had no idea why these Blue Devils were far larger than any other dog-like creature he'd seen. He speculated that their impossible size might be connected to a specific location. This site, known for handling West Tech's hazardous waste, may have exposed the breed to the forced evolutionary virus, contributing to their abnormal growth. Now, Blue Devils roam the wild, but few survive long after birth. The rare few that do grow fast, unnaturally so. Their fur, often dark, takes on an eerie blue hue under the right light, a ghostly sheen that inspired their name. But the most disturbing detail, none of the Blue Devils Clyde encountered had the white fur that Aries was searching for, suggesting that the mother Blue Devil is still out there, producing more of these creatures, the howls of which echo in the night, freezing the blood of even the most hardened hunters. They say once you hear that sound, instinct takes over, and no matter how brave you think you are, you can't help but run away. As stories of the Blue Devil spread through the mountain, another cryptid appeared around the same time, one that moved silently through the murky swamps of the Cranberry Bog. The Agar is a terrifying cryptid said to inhabit the rivers of West Virginia and Pennsylvania. This massive, alligator-like snapping turtle has been described as 20 feet long, weighing around 500 pounds, with rough, brown skin that blends seamlessly into the murky waters. Some claim the creature even possesses two heads, adding to its nightmarish appearance. Though primarily a water dweller, the Agar is known to venture onto land to feed, using its powerful jaws to snap entire deer in half. Its origins stretch back to prehistoric times, but the first recorded sighting of the colossal beast was in 1745, when a young boy, just 12 years old, was out fishing with his family near Holt. Without warning, the boy was pulled under the water by something enormous. His family searched desperately, but he was never seen again. Since that tragic day, sightings of the Agar have been reported all around Marion County, with stories of its vast size and bone-crushing strength haunting the waters it calls home. Now in Fallout, the Agar is a large turtle-like being, a giant creature that's drawn the interest of Mothman cultists, who believe that the Agar's ancient blood possesses divine secrets and the ability to reveal glimpses into the past. To fulfill their sacrificial intentions, the cult has been actively tracking the Agar as it moves south through the Cranberry Bog, although killing the creature has proven to be quite a challenge, as the Agar hides inside its impenetrable shell, emerging only when safe to strike back, snapping attackers in half with its mighty jaws. On a separate note, there may be reference to the Agar in Fallout 3's DLC The Pit, where it might be mentioned by Mona, a pit raider with a particularly disgusting degenerative skin disorder she attributes to swimming in the nearby rivers. And it's within these rivers where she believes a monster is lurking, allegedly preying on runaway slaves. Has the Agar travelled from Appalachia to escape the increasing population? Maybe, although it has yet to be seen by anyone other than Mona. But that's not the case for this next cryptid, a creature whose existence has haunted an entire population. In the dense woods of the Pine Barrens, there lurks a creature that has haunted the imaginations of locals for centuries: the Jersey Devil. Stories of this monstrous figure date back to the 1700s, but the legend is still very much alive today. The most well-known origin story centers on a woman known as Mother Leeds. Living in the wilderness, she was said to have been cursed. Some say she was a witch, while others claimed she was simply unlucky. When she gave birth to her 13th child, she uttered a curse, damning the baby to become something unnatural. What emerged from the womb wasn't human. It was a hideous creature that leaped across the room, climbed up the chimney, and escaped into the Pine Barrens. But it wasn't gone. By the early 1900s, the Jersey Devil had become more than just a story told around campfires. During one chilling week in January 1909, sightings of the creature flooded local newspapers. People claimed the devil had attacked a trolley car in Haddon Heights, frightened members of a social club in Camden, and even survived gunfire from police in Pennsylvania. The Philadelphia Zoo even offered a $10,000 reward for any proof of the creature's existence, leading to outlandish hoaxes like a kangaroo dressed with wings. But the fear was very much real. Sightings continued to creep up throughout the 20th century. In 1951, a group of boys swore they'd encountered a monster that matched the description of the devil, and by the 1960s, strange tracks and unearthly noises near Mays Landing were once again attributed to the creature. And this fear continued after the Great War, with locals telling the tale of a woman cursing her 13th child. A devil was born that fled into the Pine Barrens, and thanks to a collectible card released by Grey Tortoise to promote its cigarettes, its appearance wasn't forgotten. So when a dragon-like mutant appeared from the woods, the survivors had a name for it: the Jersey Devil. But its appearance didn't match the creature's pre-war description. Not quite. It had yellow eyes, not red, and it didn't have wings. In fact, the only thing it did have that resembled the Jersey Devil was the head of a goat, great big claws, and a pointed tail. Even so, as far as the locals were concerned, the myth was real. Now, due to circumstances I won't get into, a man called Antonio Russo, having heard the legend his entire life and believing the being was intelligent, decided to track it down and strike a deal. But to his surprise, the creature had no intelligence. It was a wild animal, and upon speaking to it, it attacked him, forcing him to kill it first. But the creature's corpse gave Antonio an idea. People would pay good money to see the Jersey Devil. So he dragged the creature back to Atlantic City and had his friend Gene, a chemist, embalm the body. And that should have been the end of it, but Gene discovered something strange, something unique about the devil's blood. Its chemical makeup was similar to that of an opioid, but it was more. It was a chem like no other, a stimulant and a depressant all rolled into one. Users described the effect as an overwhelming sensation of pleasure, and a single dose was all it took for you to want more, and no amount of rehabilitation or Addictol could stop the addiction. The only thing you could do was take more devil's blood. But there's more to this story, because the creature Antonio killed wasn't the Jersey Devil, but one of its offspring, a lesser devil. Now, the true Jersey Devil is larger. It has red eyes, bat-like wings, and everything else we've been told it should have, minus the cloven hooves. And the interesting thing is that this creature's blood is the only thing that can cure the addiction of the lesser devil blood. Luckily, it can be lured out of the Pine Barrens, but it cannot be killed. It flies away the moment it loses too much blood. The legend of the Jersey Devil still lives on in the Pine Barrens. Whether a creature from folklore or a mutated beast from the wasteland, its presence endures. As long as the dark woods remain, so will the fear and the devil lurking within. Much like the devil living inside this next cryptid. Few creatures in Appalachia evoke as much terror as the Wendigo. Twisted, gaunt figures with razor-sharp claws and an insatiable hunger for human flesh. These mutated horrors are the stuff of nightmares. They move with alarming speed, and their piercing shrieks often signal the end for anyone unlucky enough to hear them. Inspired by Algonquian First Nations mythology, the Wendigo was originally a creature of spirit and legend, a monster said to possess those who succumb to cannibalism, cursing them with an eternal, ravenous hunger for human flesh. In the post-apocalyptic wasteland of Appalachia, this myth has become a horrifying reality. The famine and hardship endured by survivors after the Great War mirror the struggles that once gave birth to Wendigo legends, but instead of the supernatural, it seems to be radiation that has twisted cannibals into these monstrous forms. Among the first to experience this transformation was Morris Stevens, the leader of the cannibalistic raider group known as the Gourmands, a faction he led alongside his wife, Edie. Although the Gourmands had a strict code of never eat your own, a severe food shortage, combined with Morris's growing obsession with cannibalism, pushed him and Edie to break that rule. Their depravity culminated in the murder of one of their own, whose half-eaten corpse was discovered by the rest of the group. Despite his leadership position, Morris and Edie were cast out from the Gourmands, seeking refuge in a cave ironically known as Wendigo Cave, where Morris's cannibalistic obsession spiraled out of control. In his descent into madness, he eventually consumed his wife, and in doing so, mutated into a Wendigo. Now known as the Progenitor, Morris preyed on his former gang members and other raiders in the region. His terror became so widespread that a large bounty was placed on his head. Yet despite this, no one ever succeeded in claiming it. Though several Wendigos now roam Appalachia, only a handful can be traced back to specific individuals. The one constant in each story is their consumption of human flesh. Take, for example, Earl Williams. Before the Great War, Earl Williams worked at a mine near Monongah, raising his daughter Maggie alone after his wife left. In April 2075, Hornwright Industrial bought the mine and replaced the workers with auto miners. At first, this seemed like a solution for the struggling town, but by January 2076, the machines had fully depleted the coal veins, leaving the mine empty. As Hornwright prepared to shut down operations, Williams and some locals, in a drunken act of defiance, decided to steal supplies from the mine. However, their plan took a tragic turn when the mine's supervisor, Deke Sykes, detonated explosives, trapping them inside. Williams and the others faced starvation. When one of the miners, James, died from his injuries, some, including Williams, resorted to cannibalism to survive. At first, Williams struggled with the horror of what he was doing, but as the days passed and more people died, he found himself slipping into madness. The hunger consumed him, and soon he began to crave the flesh of the dead, and then the flesh of the living as well. Though he left a holotape for Maggie, the man who emerged by 2103 was no longer her father. Earl Williams had mutated into a Wendigo colossus, a monstrous shadow of his former self. However, the act of consuming flesh doesn't explain why the creatures have appeared in this region alone. Some speculate that the added influence of nuclear radiation may have been the catalyst for their mutation, although that's just a theory. It could be something supernatural, or something as simple as consuming diseased human flesh. In the end, we don't know. Yet, mental degradation often accompanies the mutation process, with many individuals showing signs of madness just before their transformation. Whether this is a symptom or a requirement remains unclear, but one thing is certain: once the change takes hold, there is no turning back. Interestingly, Wendigos share a passing resemblance to feral ghouls, and in some areas the two can actually be seen working together. Though Wendigos are far more dangerous than ferals, their melee strikes are powerful enough to stagger even those wearing power armor. Almost always in a state of rage, they unleash ear-splitting screams that summon nearby ghouls to their side, turning a solitary threat into a deadly swarm. But they don't just fight, they also hunt. Wendigos are patient predators, often perching in tall, hard-to-see locations, waiting to ambush unwary travelers from above. One group of Wendigos has been spotted lurking in the trees along the central roads of the Mire, their skeletal forms blending into the landscape, making it a particularly dangerous place for travelers. Fortunately, while Fallout has brought many cryptids such as the Wendigo to life, there are several more that are mentioned by name alone, meaning they pose no real threat, the first of which is surprisingly cute. A creature of North American folklore, said to be a curious hybrid of a jackrabbit with antelope-like horns, its name being a playful combination of jackrabbit and antelope. While the jackalope might seem like the stuff of tall tales, its legend was solidified in the 1930s, when Douglas Herrick and his brother, skilled hunters and taxidermists, created the first jackalope mount by attaching deer antlers to a jackrabbit carcass. This quirky creation found its way to a hotel in Douglas, Wyoming, and quickly grew in popularity. The Herrick brothers produced many more, and soon other taxidermists across the country were doing the same, keeping the tradition alive well into the 21st century. Some believe the jackalope legend may have originated from sightings of rabbits infected with the specific virus, a condition that causes horn-like growths, lending a very real and unnerving basis for the myth. In Fallout, the jackalope is first mentioned in Fallout 2 on a holodisc belonging to Vice President Daniel Byrd. The VP muses over the idea of making the jackalope the new national mascot, although that never happened. The jackalope also pops up 2 more times in Fallout 76, appearing as a plushie collectible, and again on the sign for Priblo's Curios. So far, the jackalope hasn't appeared in the flesh, and what with its creation being a well-known hoax, I can't see the creature turning up anytime soon. But that's not to say it never will. Stranger things have happened, such as the events surrounding this next creature, known as the Chupacabra. Its name, meaning goat sucker in Spanish, is one of the most infamous creatures of Latin American folklore, renowned for its horrifying attacks on livestock, primarily goats. 2 forms of the Chupacabra have emerged from witness reports. One, a reptilian, almost alien-like creature with sharp spines running down its back, and the other, a more canine figure often referred to as a blue dog, not to be confused with a blue devil. Together, these versions account for over 2,000 sightings, all accompanied by tales of mutilated animals drained of blood through mysterious puncture wounds. It began in March 1995, when 8 sheep were found dead in Puerto Rico, each body drained of blood, with 3 peculiar puncture wounds on their chests. Soon after, the first eyewitness emerged, Madeline Tolentino. Her encounter with the creature would form the basis for the now iconic depiction of the Chupacabra, a small spiny monster with a thirst for blood. In the town of Canovanas, dozens more reported seeing the creature, swearing it leapt across rooftops and disappeared into the night sky. As the deaths mounted, stories of the Chupacabra spread beyond Puerto Rico. Eyewitnesses described it as a small, tailless creature with glowing red eyes, grey skin, and a long snake-like tongue. Its grotesque appearance was often accompanied by a nauseating, sulphur-like stench, and some claimed it moved with an unnatural hopping gait, like a twisted kangaroo. Later sightings in Mexico and the United States described a different beast, a hairless dog-like figure that stalked livestock, leaving behind the same bloodless corpses. In 2008, 2 police officers in DeWitt County, Texas, captured footage of what many believe to be a Chupacabra. The creature, seen running alongside a road, appeared hairless, with a long snout and pointed ears. possibly the result of mange. This theory gained traction in 2010 when animal control officers in Texas shot a supposed Chupacabra, later identified by scientists as a coyote-dog hybrid suffering from severe mange. But while many dismiss the Chupacabra as nothing more than sickly dogs, some believe the reptilian version could be something far more sinister, perhaps even extraterrestrial. Now, the Chupacabra gets a quick mention in Fallout New Vegas, when Nobark Noonan, the local conspiracy theorist in Novak, mistakenly believes the cryptid is killing Brahmin at the nearby ranch, feeding on the beasts of burden in the dead of night. However, the truth is the mysterious creature is nothing more than a simple nightkin using a stealth boy. While the Chupacabra haunts the land, draining livestock and spreading fear, a different mystery stirs beneath the waters of Lake Mead. The legend of the Lake Mead monster is one of curiosity and speculation. On July 21, 1948, a B-29 bomber crashed into the lake, spilling fuel into the surrounding waters. That part is true, but soon after, rumors began to swirl about something far stranger. Not long after the crash, a man was allegedly caught releasing alligators into Lake Mead. The reason? It's unclear, though some believe they were once pets that had grown too large to handle. What followed was a story of mutation. The tale goes that these alligators, now living in fuel-polluted water, and possibly exposed to radioactive fallout from nearby nuclear testing, grew unnaturally large and thrived on the lake's abundant fish. A story that has yet to be proved. But this urban legend gets a nod in Fallout New Vegas. After completing the quest Valere and raising the sunken B-29 bomber from the bottom of Lake Mead, Mr. New Vegas broadcasts reports of a large object or creature emerging from the lake, quickly dubbed the Lake Mead Monster. But is there truly something lurking beneath the water's surface? Or are people mistaking the bomber for a creature of myth? Maybe the disturbance from the aircraft stirred something long forgotten, a mutated alligator perhaps. Or maybe it's all just a wild rumor. Just as the waters of Lake Mead hold their own secrets, across the ocean lies another lake, Loch Ness, home to one of the world's most famous cryptids. The Loch Ness Monster, often called Nessie, is a legendary creature from Scottish folklore believed to inhabit Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. Descriptions of Nessie usually depict a large creature with a long neck and one or more humps breaking the surface of the water. Witnesses often describe Nessie as a creature with sleek, rubbery blackish-grey skin, stretching around 20 feet long. Its body, typically serpentine like many sea serpents and lake monsters, is said to have humps along its length and one or more sets of paddles, or sometimes short, stumpy legs. Some reports even mention small horns or a crest, especially from those who claim to have seen Nessie up close. The scientific community generally dismisses these sightings as hoaxes, wishful thinking, or simple misidentifications of ordinary objects. Despite this, cryptozoology has kept the myth alive, emphasizing Nessie as one of its favorite subjects. If Nessie is indeed an animal, then it must have had a mother, and at some point there had to be a viable breeding population of its species. However, some unconventional theories propose that Nessie originates from a space-time anomaly, which might have transported some kind of dinosaur through time, though these ideas are widely regarded as unlikely and rely on the assumption that the creature exists at all. In the Fallout universe, the Loch Ness Monster is mentioned just once by Jenny DeSoto, a pre-war employee working for H&H Tools. In a company email, she explains that she couldn't attend a weekend event because she was playing the role of the Loch Ness Monster in a play about St. Columba, an Irish abbot who famously banished a ferocious water beast to the depths of the River Ness. But that's enough about lakes and lochs. Let's move on to something much bigger, the ocean. Home to many creatures like the Mire Queen, it is bound to be hiding quite a few cryptids. Sadly, with cut content and whatnot, we know of only a single one, Ol Peg. In a conversation at Bunker Hill, two caravan guards share the strange tale. One recalls of how her grandpappy once encountered a legendary ghoul whale called Ol Peg while gathering mirelurk eggs along the shore. According to her, the whale had been ravaged by radiation, growing to an enormous size. As it emerged from the ocean, it unleashed a deafening roar, sending her terrified grandfather running for his life. She insists that if you ask any of the old-timers, they'll back up the story. Ol Peg is more than just a myth. But its existence has yet to be confirmed. Could it be a giant mutated whale, a submarine surfacing for supplies, or something else? It's difficult to say, but I did cover the creature in greater detail in a previous video, so I won't go into it here. With that said, I think it's time to wade our way back to shore for the remaining cryptids, beginning with the legendary Skinwalker. In Native American folklore, especially in Navajo tradition, a skinwalker is seen as one of the most terrifying beings imaginable. These witches are said to possess the ability to transform into any animal they choose, gaining the animal's traits to hunt, escape, or carry out dark deeds. According to legend, skinwalkers may once have used pelts to change shape, but in modern times that practice is often avoided to keep their true nature hidden. Skinwalkers are also said to be able to steal a person's face and use it to mimic someone familiar, a terrifying ability that plays into their power to manipulate and deceive. Their eyes are said to glow like in animals, even in human form, and their movements in animal form often appear unnatural or stiff. Apparently, in Navajo culture, just talking about skinwalkers is believed to be dangerous. It's said that mentioning them can draw their attention. As such, many Navajo are reluctant to discuss them at all, especially with outsiders. Despite efforts to hunt skinwalkers, they're nearly impossible to catch. Like the werewolf legends in Europe, it's said that a skinwalker retains injuries sustained in animal form when they return back to human shape. But many who have tracked skinwalkers report that the trail often leads back to someone they know, adding another layer of fear and suspicion to the legend. Although skinwalkers don't appear directly in Fallout, the concept is referenced in Fallout New Vegas' DLC Honest Hearts. In that DLC, the Dead Horses tribe, during a moment of frustration when they lose track of someone, might shout Yinad Lushi, meaning skinwalker. This belief seems to have been passed down from the original Navajo tribe, the Dead Horses' ancestors who survived the Great War alongside English and German tourists. I think a skinwalker would make for a great enemy, and with radiation, mutations, and viruses being responsible for many of the cryptids mentioned thus far, it wouldn't be that difficult to make them lore-friendly, and the same goes for this next cryptid too. The Sasquatch, more commonly known as Bigfoot, is mentioned a single time on the cover of a backwoodsman magazine. Described as a large, hairy, upright walking being resembling an ape. Most sightings are associated with the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, but reports have surfaced all across North America. Early reports of a large ape-like creature roaming North America date back to the Native American legends, where cave paintings depict what we now recognize as Sasquatches. However, the first written account of such a creature came from David Thompson in 1811. While mapping parts of Canada and the US, Thompson spoke with the Spokane tribe, who told him about a race of giants living in the nearby mountains. These giants, according to the tribe, would steal salmon from their camp and sometimes people while they slept, and this next account seems to support that claim. In 1924, Albert Ostman, a lumberjack and woodsman, ventured into the wilderness for a quiet getaway. Though he had heard tales of man-beasts roaming the area, he didn't believe them, but perhaps he should have. One night, while asleep in his sleeping bag, Ostman was allegedly picked up and carried away by a Sasquatch. For 3 hours, the creature carried him across rough terrain before dropping him on a plateau, where he found himself surrounded by a family of 4 Sasquatches. Despite having a gun, Ostman never used it, as the Sasquatches hadn't harmed him. During his stay, they fed him a sweet-tasting grass, and he observed the female Sasquatch washing and stacking leaves. Eventually, he escaped by offering the large male Sasquatch some tobacco, which made him groggy. Ostman kept his story to himself, fearing people would think he was crazy, but as more Sasquatch sightings gained media attention, Ostman decided to share his account with the province newspaper in 1957. Another notable encounter also took place in 1924 at Ape Canyon near Mount St. Helens. A group of prospectors, including Fred Beck, experienced several nights of strange activity. They heard whistling, thumping sounds, and even saw large human-like figures in the distance. One evening, their cabin came under attack by what Beck described as mountain devils, hairy ape-like creatures throwing rocks and trying to break in. Later investigation suggested the creatures might have been campers throwing rocks down the canyon, but the terrifying experience lived on in local lore. Given the Appalachian Mountains' reputation as a refuge for these creatures, it's surprising that Bigfoot hasn't made an appearance in Fallout 76. However, I can understand why, because there are more unique and intriguing cryptids out there, like this final cryptid, whose existence defies all logic. The Squonk is a mythical creature believed to inhabit the hemlock forests of northern Pennsylvania. The earliest written account of the Squonk comes from the 1910 book Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods by William T. Cox. According to Cox, the Squonk is known for its shy nature, typically wandering during twilight and dusk. It has ill-fitting skin, covered in warts and moles, contributing to its perpetual unhappiness. Skilled hunters can track it by following its tear-stained trail, as the Squonk is said to weep constantly. When cornered or frightened, it can dissolve itself into a pool of tears, making it almost impossible to catch. One story recounts of how a man named J.P. Wentling actually captured a Squonk. He coaxed the creature into a bag by mimicking its sounds, but when he returned home, the bag suddenly felt lighter. Upon inspection, he discovered that all that remained was a puddle of tears. This legend was later referenced in the 1939 book Fearsome Critters, which suggested that the Squonk had migrated from deserts to swamps before finally settling in Pennsylvania. This movement may have been influenced by the logging camps that were constantly shifting during the early 20th century, suggesting the Squonk was either following them or being pushed further and further into the wilderness as more and more trees were chopped down. In Hal Johnson's 2015 update of Fearsome Creatures, the Squonk's appearance was slightly altered, now resembling a pig, with warts, cauliflower-like ears covered in waxy hair, crooked yellow tusks, and rheumy eyes that constantly weep, with its most notable feature being its contagious misery that can cause those around it to weep themselves into a puddle of tears, implying that perhaps the Squonk was following the logging camps in efforts to prevent them from cutting down trees. A weeping Lorax, if you will, but that's just a theory. So far, the Squonk hasn't appeared in Fallout outside of a single image. However, since certain cryptids like the Agar, Blue Devil, and Jersey Devil were merely mentioned and then appeared in later updates, there's a strong possibility that some of these mentioned-only cryptids, like the Squonk, could one day be more than simple illustrations.